Yeah. So, hi Amos. Thanks for joining. So, in this session, right? Maybe in the previous session, we have seen the DevOps introduction and agile planning and the project management and so how the task assigns and all they are happening in Azure boards. And so the last two sessions we have seen the basics of Git and Git strategy, maybe the branching strategy we have seen. And so today, so we are going to see the configuring the Azure pipelines. So we know the Azure pipeline is mean for CI/CD service. So that is the one of the service from Azure DevOps to create the build and release pipeline. So where we can set up some automation, so whenever the developer has pushed the coding changes, it will automatically trigger the job like building and running the test automation and taking the jar, and then it will be finally it will be pushed to the maybe the deployment environment also. Okay, so in between we can set up, we can integrate many tools. Maybe the one of the tools, maybe I would say like ServiceNow. So that is the one of the important change management tool. And so for example, for maybe, yeah, maybe when we are going to the next slide, yeah, we can see that one. So today our agenda for our session is like so maybe overview of the Azure pipelines and the concept of Azure pipelines, maybe what it means for like so earlier we are discussing just be only for the application build and deployment. It's not like that. Even we can use for other maybe the infrastructure automation. And I'm here that some of the ETL like Informatica, and there also maybe they can use Azure DevOps. Even the ETL and reporting tools also, maybe in some other way they can use Azure DevOps and they can set up some automation. But majorly we will use this for application build and automation like .NET, Java, or Python project or any microservice projects. But even we can do for the infrastructure automation and maybe even other type of projects also like ETL, maybe the and then reporting the SSR or something, but I'm not sure. But still we can extend for that, those kind of applications also. And then the next is the key terminologies. So maybe before going maybe into the depth, we need to understand some of the key terminologies like what is agent, what is agent pool, and so some kind of terminologies are there like stages, task, job. So there are some terminologies are there, so that one also we are going to see. And then the agents, so this is the one of the important thing like where our build is going to run. And maybe at the end it could be any one of the VM or any machine, right? So sometimes Azure is providing agent machines that is called self, maybe the Microsoft hosted agent machine. And we can also set up some our own agent machine. Maybe if you have in our on-premise server, we have already having the tens of virtual machines, but it is not used for anything. So we can use this one as the agent machine so that we can utilize the maybe the resource well. And that one also we are going to see. And apart from that, the classic designer pipeline, but in that Azure DevOps, right? So they are providing a two way of pipeline creation. So one is the classic designer and another one is through YAML pipeline. Okay, so when the Azure DevOps the tool is maybe when it is created, at the time they have provided the classic designer. But in it, when it is evolving day by day, right? So currently they are giving the YAML support. So maybe we can call it like pipeline as code. So that is the mostly used concept in all the other CI tools also, because there are some advantages when we are using the pipeline as code. So that one also we'll see. And then so how we can configuring the self-hosted agent mission, so that one. And after that, so today we are just going to walk through of maybe Azure pipeline YAML file. So and after that, maybe in the next session and all, we will see some kind of integration and all. But this is the agenda for this session. Okay. So the next we can go to the overview. Okay. So as I said already, maybe the CACD, so the service means, right, maybe we can call it like software as a service. Okay. So for example, earlier we have discussed that Azure DevOps is one-stop solution for many services like agile planning and source code repositories, and then CI/CD solution and artifact repository, test case management. So there are many services, and altogether all the services are there in one places. So with the single endpoint like Azure DevOps, we are using this one. So in that Azure pipelines, right, it will becomes under the CI/CD service. Okay. And as I said earlier, so it will support for both classic designer and then YAML pipelines. So maybe when you are doing some learning, right, so at the time you can use classic designer, because maybe it mostly like there will be already the template or built-in task will be there. You can just do drag and drop, and maybe in the placeholder you have to provide what command you need to run. So you don't need any scripting knowledge, or you don't need any YAML knowledge and all, but to get started, right? So at the time we can go with classic designer, and even the real time application also we can use it. But if anyone they are starting the new project, right, they won't prefer to go with the classic designer, because there are some limitations are there. And all of them, they will, the new projects and all, they would be going with the YAML pipelines, because as like your developer, right? So for example, the developer will do the source code, and then they will push it to the git repository. Okay. In parallel to the same source code repository, you also will be having a one file called azure pipelines.yaml file. So there you will define all the CE/CD, maybe the script, and then the automation like trigger definition. So everything you will be defined in the azure pipelines.yaml file. Okay. So that maybe even your changes also, it would be you have to follow the same source code, maybe the branching as like other developers. Even you won't have any UI maybe from the Azure DevOps. So you can also things like it is the one of the development story, and you have to define all the definitions there. And when you are pushing it to the git, and git will detect that azure pipelines.yaml file it is there, so that based on that it will run the all the build and task in the sequential manner. However, we are specifying in the azure pipelines.yaml file. The only one thing is, like the I have said, right, that azure pipelines.yaml file, it should be in the root directory, and we should not change the file name, maybe file name or extensions. We should not change it. If you are changing it, maybe it can't detect our build file. Maybe it will be think like it is also one of the any other source code file, something source code or configuration file. Okay. And yeah, so similar like Azure DevOps, right, even the GitLab also the same thing. So there they will have the GitLab ci.yaml file, and the GitHub also the similar kind of I think, yeah. So there are also some YAML files will be there, and we have to provide the build and CI/CD definition, the task and all. Okay. And then we can create the cross-platform pipelines. Okay. So mostly, right, maybe when you are hearing about the Azure DevOps or Microsoft Azure, most of the time we are thinking like maybe the Azure DevOps it is only for the .NET projects, maybe it is only for the service, maybe in the Azure itself. But it is not like that. It is also one of the tool from Microsoft, maybe Microsoft. And maybe here you can maybe develop any kind of maybe the technologies, like it will support Python, Java and Ruby. And so it mostly, right, as like other CI tools, it will support all the languages and technologies. And also maybe when it comes to integration, right, maybe the deployment environment. Okay. So when it comes to deployment environment, either you will be deploying in any one of the on-premise server, maybe that is your private, the own your company is managing the cluster, maybe the data center, and it could be any one of the public cloud platform, that is like Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, or Alibaba Cloud, and there are many things, right? So it could be any one of the public cloud. And even so maybe I have said the popular four, right? But even there are many other cloud also there, like Oracle, IBM cloud, there are many things are there. Maybe that one also it will support. But when it comes to native support, right, so maybe you don't need to do any much coding on the Azure side, okay? Because Microsoft, they will have the many plugins, because maybe the Active Directory, everything, right? So it will support as the native feature. But when it goes to maybe AWS or any other maybe the cloud cloud thing, so if you are if the user is using mostly, so at the time what the other team will do is like they will create the plugin. And maybe for example, even as a company, even we can create the plugin for maybe deploying uh, we can create a one script for deploying the application from our Azure DevOps to, and maybe AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So that also, that is one of the platform service in the AWS. Okay, so I can, as a company, maybe I am not the Microsoft, I am not the AWS. As I am a other company, I can create some plugins, maybe because I know this is a huge demand outside. So I can create template or the plugin. So maybe in that marketplace I can give it, so that maybe I will give it as the licensed product, so that from that I can get some kind of money and all. Okay, so mostly, right, so we can use some kind of default template. And otherwise, so we have to maybe do some kind of scripting. So it is not like we cannot do any kind of initiation and all, but we can anyway. So but if you're using template, that could be simpler, because whatever the logic you want to write, so they will wrap it in the template, and then they will give it for the ready-made product something. Okay, uh, so that is how. Okay, so basically in the crash platform, so it will support any kind of application or the technology languages, it will support everything. And even the scripting also, there are many things, right? The shell scripting, Python, PowerShell, it will support everything. And also when it comes to deployment target, it can deploy the application to, so anything it is accessible over the internet. Okay, maybe so that one also I'm saying, like for example, if you have the only the one criteria, right, it has to be reachable from the Azure DevOps. Maybe you will have a own data center, so within the maybe it will be your maybe the servers and all, right, it will be accessible over the private network only. So at the time the Azure DevOps cannot maybe reach your server, so we cannot do deployment. So at the time, so you have to initiate the VPN connection from your Azure DevOps to, and then your on-premise. But definitely that is the doable only. But the only the criteria is it has to be reachable over the internet. Or if it is not, you have to create some private link from Azure DevOps to, and then your on-premise. So that is the somewhat advanced concepts. Mostly we don't need to go into that. Okay, so now hope you now you understand that what I mean for the cross platform pipelines. Okay, and then you know that what is the continuous integration, because which means like so how you are incrementally adding the maybe the functionalities to the existing code. So the new code, it should work, and then the existing the maybe functionalities already working in production, right, it should not affect, maybe the new code should not affect the existing one. So how we can ensure that the new code is not affected the existing one? Okay, so that maybe the our testing team, they have to run they have to create Selenium scripts, or the test automation scripts. And then for the quality, we can integrate some Sonar Cube and any other for maybe the quality, the Sonar Cube is okay. And when it comes to security, we have to see many tools available there, right? Maybe the black duck check marks and caster highlight. So the rapid 7, there are many tools are there. The 45 something. So we can integrate. So that is based on maybe the organization, the usage only. So whatever the license you have, so you can use that. And then the build and test. So mostly, right? The CA means till the source code pushed to the maybe the repository. From there the build will be started, and then the test, whatever the unit test cases are written, so it will be executed. And in the same pipeline we will have the quality related the tool integration. It will do the scanning, and finally we will package the binary. So because at the end the binaries only will be pushed to the deployment environment, and we will be pushing the artifact to the nexus, maybe the any kind of artifact repository. Maybe in that case the popular one is like the nexus, JFrog, and even in the Azure artifact. Okay, so this is what the CA. And then the CD means, the deploying the artifact in the target environment. Yeah, it could be anything like on-premise, Azure, or AWS. And maybe once you have deployed, right, so you have to ensure that whether whatever the things, maybe the features deployed, you have to verify it. Like maybe you can, so that is based on the test automation should. So maybe the testing team, they know that if you're running these, maybe if you have the 100 maybe the test cases, maybe you can just validate the maybe the important for the basic for, so that you can ensure that at least the build everything is fine, the application it will work fine. So those kind of the sanity or smoke testing we can do. And maybe even we can integrate the full, maybe we can configure to run full regression test shoot. But that those inputs and all, maybe the testing team they will provide, and you just need to integrate with the application, maybe mostly in the Java. So this is how it will happen. But in the same in the .NET also the same thing, we can do that. So mostly the Maven we will use. And apart from that the CD, right, the service now integration. For example, for example, if any kind of deployment, right, so you have to get the approval from any one of the maybe the managers or the change management team or the cab advisory team. So when you're going to the enterprise level DevOps, right, so there will be specifically some teams for the change advisory board. So they will watch all kind of the production releases, and if there is any risk or the impact to the business, so they will ask a queries and all. But before you are going to any kind of the deployment, so you need to get the approval from them. You need to get approval from them. So once they have given the approval, and then only you can proceed the deployment on the scheduled date. Okay, so that maybe the change ticket integration also we have to integrate with Azure DevOps. But mostly, right, so even the Azure DevOps is providing the pre-gateway approval. So the workflow they are giving. So for example, so you can select like before going to the UAT or the production deployment something, so you have to get the approval from your manager. So once he approved, maybe once that the task is coming into that particular job or task, right, so automatically the mail with the approval link, it will be sent to your manager. And then manager, they with the just from his Outlook or the mail client, he can just approve it. So once he approved, yeah, you can proceed the deployment on the date. So this is how it will happen. But even the enterprise level, so they will use the service now. So it is having the maybe there are many things actually, like incident and maybe the change management. So there are many things are there. Maybe, yeah, as a DevOps engineer we have to know the service now also. But this course is not mainly into that, but you can just see that. And maybe even in your prior experience also, maybe you will use, maybe you had a chance to work with service now, I guess. So I'm also, if you have any queries or something, yeah, you can ask me, I will respond to that.
So is it like the both the CA and CD are like integrated into the pipelines?
Yeah, so for example, when you're So we know that the CI/CD pipelines that is offered from the Azure pipelines. Okay, so from the pipelines only we are going to create the build and release pipeline. So when you are designing the classic designer, right? Okay, so at the time you will be creating the separate pipeline. So you will have the build there. You will configure the CI pipeline, and there will be some option called release. So there you will create the release pipeline. But if you are going with Azure pipelines, right, in the same YAML file you have to define all the build and release. Okay, because otherwise, right, we cannot say like Azure pipelines build.yaml file, this is having the CA pipeline definition, and maybe Azure pipelines release.yaml file, this is having the release configuration. It's not like that. But when you're going with Azure pipe, maybe the YAML based configuration, you will be maintaining only one file. In the same file you will be defining all the stages and the job, that is for the build and release. But that is, yeah, maybe when you can see that pipeline, maybe the file, right, you will easily understand. We don't need to maintain the two separate files for the build and release. But when you're going with the classic designer, you definitely needs to follow the maybe the two separate pipelines.
Okay, so in the industry standard, like probably people will be going directly to the YAML files
Yeah, yeah,
instead of doing
yeah.
the classic designer.
Yeah, correct. Because, right, so I will say some of the advantages of using Azure pipelines. Okay, so for example, if you are creating the visual designer, you cannot get to that definition into the source code repository. So for example, you are creating some classic designer build pipeline, so you can directly go to the portal and then you are drag and drop some kind of task that you need. Okay, but you don't know maybe what you have the task maybe yesterday, maybe what are all the tasks you had yesterday. And maybe if you cannot revert also, maybe those kind of functions you cannot have. But when you are having that pipeline definition in the source code, right, so you know the full track and then audit logs who has changed, and maybe in the last 1 week what maybe the scripting you have made. Maybe for example you made some changes, and so from that changes the our build and release pipeline is not working. So in this scenario you can directly go to that pipe, maybe the source code repository, and then you can go to the Azure pipelines.yaml file, and you can see the history of changes. So maybe you can, if maybe you will have some understanding that, yeah, if you are just reverting this particular line, maybe your CI/CD pipeline, it will work as like yesterday. Okay, and then one more advantage is like so you can here uh, you can create some kind of the reusable components, and then maybe so even the other teams also they can reuse the same maybe the task and all. So for example, in the visual designer, for every team, maybe in your maybe if you are working in a one company, so there maybe the 100 application teams are there. Okay, so there what they need to do is like for everyone they need to go to classic designer, and then they need to create the build and release pipeline. Okay, but if you are maybe at the enterprise level, what they will do is like they will create the common reusable functions in maybe one project, and all the Azure pipe, maybe all the other application teams, right, they have to reuse it. They have to just
Mhm.
reuse the particular function, and so that they can maintain the consistent CI/CD pipelines in all the application team. If you're maybe if I'm giving the access, full access to you, and maybe you will be doing in whatever the knowledge and whatever your previous experience, based on that you will be creating the pipeline. But even the same other teams are also, right, if you are giving the full control, so we cannot maintain the consistency. But in the pipelines as a code, right, so they will be having the reusable functions in a one particular repository, and you can easily reuse those maybe pipelines in your YAML file. So that also one of the important thing. And maybe you cannot maybe from the classic designer it will be something like maybe you do, maybe you don't know exactly what is each and everything is doing, maybe unless if you are providing some proper name. But even if you are maybe in the outside, we can have any kind of name, but we don't know inside the each and every plugin what we have written and all, we don't know actually. But when you are going to the Azure pipelines, you will have maybe it could be only one file, and inside that you can, like what are all the stages are there, and for which maybe within the stages what are all the jobs you have configured, and each job what are all the script we are going to execute it. So you will have the clear view of what you have it in the Azure pipelines in the YAML definition. Okay. And then maybe in the industry, right? Okay. So like in maybe I'm just saying like some example, like pipeline as code and then infrastructure as code. Okay. So earlier maybe the industry is moving like so all the changes, right, they have to bring it into the code, and then it has to be maybe in the declarative manner actually. So earlier maybe we are just going to the portal or somewhere we are creating the resource, so we cannot create any consistent behavior. Okay. But when we are maybe bringing the code maybe this with the same script, maybe you can easily spin up the new CI/CD pipelines for your other project also. You just have to change some kind of the project name alone. So for example, maybe the DevOps means maybe most of the team they will go with the microservice architecture, right? So for example, let's say you have the maybe the 20 microservices. So we cannot maintain so the 20 the build pipelines in the classic designer, right? Because we have to create this 20 visual designer, maybe the build pipelines. But mostly, right, for all the application the concept is same. For example, if it is the .NET Core web API, so most all the test execution, the build and restoring the dependencies, and sonar code, the sonar cube, the code quality check, so everything is same. So for all the task will be same. So just maybe the project name only would be differ, and based on that application, so it will use the different kind of the configurations. So you can just copy the Azure pipelines.yaml file in another project, so you can easily create the CI/CD pipeline. Otherwise, right? So someone needs to go to the maybe Azure DevOps, and there they have to create the classic the Visual Designer pipelines and all. So you got it almost.
Yeah, 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 clear.
Yeah. So and then the next one is concept of maybe Azure pipelines. So maybe what are all the things we are achieving here, like the build automation and continuous integration, and the test automation, like for example to ensure the maybe whether the functionality is working or not, right? So mostly, right, maybe in my earlier project. So that is the API projects only, and API, and the front end is React. So we will have some. So we will have the two teams, like one for performance engineering and another team for the maybe functional testing team. Okay. So the performance testing engineer, he will use maybe load runner, or there are some performance testing tool, right? So they will create the script, and then we can integrate with our pipelines. So for example, we need to see, right, so what is the maximum load. Even the from the requirement they will provide like so we will be having these many rows in the file, and we have to process it in the 5 minutes or 2 minutes something. Okay. So those things and all the performance testing team they will ensure that okay, our application and our deployment, the scaling, right, so with the current hardware, yeah, we can achieve the our expectation something. So that what we have to do is, maybe the testing team they will, maybe the performance testing team, they will provide the load runner, or even another maybe other tools also there. So they will just provide the script, and then we have to maybe integrate with our application. So once the application is deployed, and then they will do maybe multiple call from the same host actually. Okay. For example, maybe the requirement could be like at a time maybe the 100 users will be there with the web server. So what, whether the application is crashing or it is able to handle the request and all. So those kind of things we have to verify. And apart from that, the maybe the functionality testing, testing team side, for example, they have used the Selenium automation testing shoot. Okay, and there what they will do is like they will write some testing script, and then with for example our right, the web application, it will be running in the browser only. So they will have the browser, maybe the driver, it is to connect the testing scripts, and then our web application. So it will integrate both, and then it will automatically log into the application, and then it will try to maybe the create the maybe the record and delete the record, maybe whatever the application functionality, right? It will try to simulate what how the manual tester is doing that one. Okay, so that is the Selenium testing automation shoot. Maybe you can also just have some understanding about that one, so that also it will help. And apart from that, the rest assured, so that is the API testing tool. For example, right, so for example you have created the one API, for example, to manage the employees in the organizations, like creating employee, deleting and updating the employee, right? So anyway, we will with that API call only we will be interacting with that one. Okay, so that they will they will provide the rest assured that script, and then they will pass all the values in the Excel file or something. Okay, so for example there will be some comments like maven test, or there could be some comments. So you just want to integrate with the same pipeline, but most of the time, right, so they won't have that the API testing and all. I'm just saying like, so what it means like test automation, the performance testing is there, and then the API testing is there, and then functional testing also with the Selenium automation script tool. And apart from that, the security testing we are doing with the tools we already discussed the last session, right? The check marks, and then the Rapid7 AppSider Enterprise. So those kind of tools are there. So with that we are integrating with our pipelines. And then the deployment automation, for example, once the build is created, how we are pushing it to the maybe the deployment target. Like the target could be any kind of deployment platform, like it could be the Kubernetes cluster or the app services, or it can be the VM machine hosted in the public cloud or in your on-premise cloud, so anything. Okay, and yeah, so basically we are deploying from Azure DevOps to any of the destination. Okay, and then the infrastructure provisioning. So for example nowadays, right, for example we are most of the team whoever using the DevOps practices, they would use microservice architecture, and then they would use the any kind of the cloud infrastructure like public, the Azure or AWS. Okay, so for example in your same project, right, you will be having many cloud resources. For example, if you want to deploy your .NET application in Azure, right, it's just not like you only need the app services. Okay, you need to have the virtual network, and then maybe you may be enabling the application insights just for maybe analyzing or analyzing your application behaviors. And then maybe you might use the storage, and the storage account, for example you may be interacting with some kind of files, so that you can be maybe using the Azure storage, and then the Azure SQL database. And there are many things are there. So for example for configuring in the dev environment itself, you might need some kind of like maybe the 10 to 15 resources. Okay, like public IP, private IP. So there are many, maybe even you are creating app service account, by default it will create more than 10 resources. Okay, to create the maybe for example, right, if you are just created the dev environment manually, you cannot create this. Maybe we can create that. If you are, we need to be very careful on that. So with that we can create the same environment in other environment also, UAT and production also. But that is not the easy solution. Maybe it is very complex, but still we cannot ensure that all the maybe the resource we created, right, it is same as like the identical to the dev environment. Okay, so that is the place the infrastructure provisioning is comes to the picture. Like we will be creating the script, and then with that script we will create the dev environment, and then with the same script maybe we will create the UAT and production environment also. The only the configuration we are passing, right, the only the things it will differ. Okay, and apart from that, so for example, maybe the scaling options and all you might be changing it. For example, maybe in the dev environment, right, you just need the only 4 core CPU, the VM machine. Okay, but in maybe in production and all, right, maybe this is maybe the dev is for just a testing purpose, you don't need much capabilities. But when you're going to the UAT and production and all, maybe you will be increasing the you would be increasing the number of the instance, and then the capabilities also, like the memory and this quota, so everything you will be increasing it, so based on your requirement. Okay, because the all the external things like maybe the environment name, and then the number of instances, and then the and the hardware configuration, maybe the resource configurations. So those things and all you will be parameterizing the script, so that when you are running the script you will be passing that particular parameters with the values, so that with the same identical to the dev environment you can easily spin up the other environment also. Okay, with the so in that perspective only the infrastructure provisioning is comes into the picture. So mostly, right, the Terraform is the popular the cloud provisioner tool, and then in the Azure, right, so ARM templates, and then in the AWS we are having the cloud formation. Okay, so even for example the Terraform also we have to create the script, and we can have it in that Git repository, and by just running the Terraform commands you can be creating the we will be able to create the Azure resources in the maybe Azure resources in the public cloud. Okay, and then the configuration management, so like the Ansible and then Chef, Puppet and all will be part of the it's one of the configuration management tool. So mostly, right, so for example your enterprise is maintaining 100 VM, and they need to update some the security patches that Microsoft is recently released on. Okay, so that maybe you cannot log into each and every VM. So what they will do is like they will create the playbook, and then they will run from the one master node, so it will applies all the security patches in all the VM machine in the. So so in that kind of configuration management, maybe as a DevOps we will be using the Ansible or maybe the, Chef or Puppet. So based on the company they are using, based on the tool they are using, yeah, we can use that. And also, right, we can you can be think like the DevOps profile also. So they can be working in the application, the CI/CD pipelines for application migration, and maybe the microservice application deploying into any one of the deployment environment. And otherwise, right, maybe they are more focused into the test automation alone. And also the next is the infrastructure provisioning, maybe the infra automation, right, so that also nowadays and all it is coming under the DevOps. So that you might be creating the infra automation also, like creating the resources, and then the configuration management, the Ansible and all, right, the Ansible writing the playbooks, and so those things also comes under the DevOps. Because even it's not means like if you are completed the Azure DevOps you need to do all the things, but even based on your interest you can be specialized into any one of the things, and then you can get the job there. So you are so almost if you are having any query, yeah, you can let me know.
Yeah, everything comes under the Azure DevOps, but why the infrastructure provisioning is under the pipelines?
Okay, so for example the Azure, for example the infrastructure provisioning also, right, for that also you can create the pipelines similar like your application migration, right? So for example, if you want to deploy some application, what you will do is like you will create the pipeline and you will run it, it will be deployed. So similar like
Okay.
infrastructure provisioning also, you will create the script, you will create the pipeline. When you are running the pipeline, it will automatically create the resources in the cloud.
So like a virtual machine, all those things.
Yeah,
So that
virtual
should be
machine.
defined previously, right?
No, so Azure pipelines, right? So this, for example, whatever the thing we can achieve in the pipeline, we are discussing here, so that the application migration, the build and automation, we can do that. Deployment automation, we can do that. So just for your understanding, I am mentioning like the infra provisioning also we can do with the same pipeline. Maybe, right? So for
Okay.
example, maybe in the next session and all, right? Maybe we will be
Mhm.
deploying the .NET application to the maybe the Azure app services. Okay, it is not mean that like maybe we will be having the only the in the pipeline definition. It's not mean like only we will have the .NET build restore only those concepts in the same in the same pipeline, right? We will have the infrastructure code also. Maybe in the same project we will have the Terraform some kind of folder, and inside that we will have all the infrastructure related script. So before you are running the deployment, maybe before we are deploying our application, we will run the infra code, and once that infra code is completed, then only we will deploy your application. You got it? Because in the nowadays, right, in the build means it's not only like your application binary. So in the same build, we have to stage our infra code also. For example, if you are going with any public cloud, and then if you are deploying into any kind of public cloud, so you have to stage the Terraform script and also your binaries.
Okay.
So in the same pipeline, we will be maintaining the Terraform, but that is mostly, right. So that is based on the maybe the company standard only. But most of the companies in the same pipeline, they will use the Terraform, and then uh, so and then application, and they might use the different pipeline also. So in that case, what you have to do is like you first needs to run the infra pipeline, and once that is completed, then only you have to run the your application, maybe the build pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline.
So the whole deployment, everything will be coming
Yeah,
after like
yeah.
that.
So for example, for an one example, right? For example, you are using the key vault for storing your DB connection string. Okay. So for example, so you have changed something. For example, so in the high availability, right? So for example, you have created the instance in the two regions. One is in the US and another one is in India. Okay. So those kind of configurations you can mention in the Terraform script. Okay, so for example, in the same thing, right? For example, you have the app services, the instance is created in the two region. Okay, so when it is trying to deploy in the Azure app services, it will try to look up the key vault from the nearest region. Okay, I'm just saying for this one example, but whatever
Mhm.
the maybe the changes, right? For example, you can be yeah. So for example, in that app service, right? So there we can select the number of instances. Okay, number of instances you need, like whether you need one instance or two instance something. Okay, so earlier it was the two instance running. Your application is running in the two instance. Okay, so for example, currently I am changed to only one instance. Okay, what it maybe when I'm running that pipeline, right, what it will do is like it will delete the one instance, and the next one is it will run your application deployment, right? So there so in the single instance only it will deploy the application. Okay,
So
maybe.
on the other day, something like you said, like a blue-green deployment or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, the blue green deployment, yeah, you can configure in the release pipeline. Like in that app service, you will have a two, maybe based on your need, you can have the two slot. Yeah, that is
Mhm.
different. Maybe, yeah, maybe that one also one kind of example. For example, earlier I don't have any slot configuration. Okay. So for example, if you are just running the deployment, it won't work because the slot configuration is not done yet. So for that, what you can do is like, maybe first you can run the maybe the infra script, so that we will be enabling the slots and all. And then once that is enabled, when you are running that one, right, so that you will be able to deploy the application.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, here it is like for every infra code or infra script, so that if there is something, yeah, first we are deploying this one, and after that, yeah, we are deploying our build our application build actually binaries.
So this will be like a one-time setup for the pipeline, right?
Yeah, this is the one time setup. So for example, right, maybe you can be update some your infra also. So for example, currently you are deploying in the app service. Okay, so based on that
Mhm.
only you will be having the in the Terraform codes and all. Okay, so maybe the next time, maybe after 2 weeks or something, you are changed to AKS cluster. So at the time, what you will do is like, in your Terraform script, you will remove the app service block. Instead, you will add the AKS cluster configuration, so that from the next time onwards, it will be deploying into the maybe the AKS cluster. So even the same thing, right? You will be verifying from dev environment whether that is working correct or not. So similar, like for every environment, you are doing the same thing. The dev also, first you will deploy the infra, and then you will be deploying the maybe your application binary. So similar, like, so if that is current exactly working fine in the dev environment, the same it will work for the QA and production everywhere also.
So this pipeline, first time when we are doing some kind of a deployment, right? Like we will be putting all the binaries, like all the DLLs, everything.
Okay.
And then the second time is, say, for example, if we have like 10 DLL, right? And then the second time when I'm working on it, I'm going to change only one DLL. So
Okay.
that time, this pipeline will again take all the 10 DLLs, whatever is on the folder,
Yeah, correct. So for,
the development.
yeah, so mostly, right, for example, it will do as the fresh build only, it will copy. Even if you're changing one single line or single the variable name, right, it will do the
Mhm.
fresh build, and after that only it will deploy to the because, right, even you are making some simple change, it is the new code only. So based on that, it will create the new build, and then it will deploy into the environment. Maybe it
So in that
don't.
situation only, yeah, in that situation only one DLL will be getting updated, right?
Uh,
So
no, no, maybe
if the pipeline is
okay, but I'm not sure. Maybe why you are saying. Maybe you are saying like, for example, the DLL can be right. So, for example, in your .NET Core project, maybe you are using the maybe you are connecting the SQL Server database, so that maybe you will have the entity framework related DLLs. That one you are saying, or is there any class library you are creating, or that one you are saying?
yeah, say for example, like if I have like a website, right? Like so that website will have a DLL, and then
Okay.
if I am referencing another like a business object as another project, right? So if I have that project as another DLL within the same bin folder, that's what we are going to reference
Okay, so you're
on
saying
the
like, yeah,
project.
yeah, under the one solution, you are having the business, maybe you are having some of the class library project, and finally one API project. In all the class library, you are adding in the API project as the reference.
Correct.
Okay, so in
So
this,
in that
yeah,
situation, yeah,
yeah,
good.
yeah, in this situation, right? Yeah, mostly it will try to copy, and then it will push everything. So mostly it will delete the existing one, and after that it will copy the new DLLs, everything. But without that, right, we don't have any problem, right? Maybe why we need to copy the only the affected DLLs. Mostly,
Normally, that's not like on the regular deployments, right? Like when we give it to the support team or the network team who manages and then promotes it to the QAR prod. So we give like only the affected thing. If there might be like 20 different DLLs we might be having in one project, right? Like or one bin folder. So we don't give always all the 20 DLLs.
Okay, but there is a many chances for the error, right? So, for example, you are thinking like the infra library only you have to change it, and maybe the another the business that class library only you have to change it. But that is something like you are. But we have to take the build, and we should not edit any of the build. Actually, you are saying like once that is deployed, you are going to edit the particular build. But once you are editing the
Mhm.
system defined build, right? We don't know whether it will work as expected or not, because once the build is created, apart from that configuration file, you should not edit anything in the DLL or application, the classes level and all. So inside the DLL anyway the class CS file and all will be there, right? If you are extracting that
Mhm.
inside, maybe the CS files and the class files and all will be there. So you are trying to do edit the build, so that is not the good practice. Maybe if you want to edit something, right, you can edit the configuration files, but you should not touch anything on the DLL level. Maybe if you are saying, right, we just want to update one DLL, which is means like you are editing the particular release build.
No, like a bug fix, I'm saying. Like first time you are doing the complete build, right? Like so with all the files, with all the views, all the
Yeah,
bin folder,
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
But when we are working on a bug fix in a later release, so that time I want to push only one DLL. But if I use the same existing pipeline, it's again going to bundle up all the files within that folder.
Yeah, that is totally fine, right, Amos? So for example, right, so you have fixed some class library, okay,
Okay.
but in the same class library, for example, right, you have add employee function you have mentioned in the maybe in the business library, okay, and you are calling the same library in your web API project, okay. So
Mhm.
earlier you had two parameters for the particular method, okay. For
Yeah.
a fix,
Mhm.
some developer added three parameters, okay,
Mhm.
and then you are saying like now the issue is fixed, and then this DLL has to be pushed to the particular maybe the bin location or somewhere, okay. So when
Right.
you are
Mhm.
copying that one, but even your web API project, right, it will try to maybe it will check the method which is having the only two parameters, but definitely it will do the compile errors will happen, right, because it can't detect the, because in your API project it will expect only the two parameters. So what we have to do is like whenever you are using any kind of DLL, you have to try to compile with the latest DLL, whether it is showing any kind of compilation error and all. So otherwise, right, there is some possibility, right, it can throw some compilation maybe errors also in this scenario. For example, you are changed the maybe the method definition,
Mhm.
so we have to maybe the refer the latest DLL in our API project, and then you have to build it, and then you need to verify whether the compilation error or anything is happening. And if everything is okay, you have to do one round of unit test case with the your web API interface also, because this is your maybe the end application, right? From that API project only you are checking the class library and all. Okay, so
Yeah.
you have to verify the fix by testing in the API project, and after that only you have to deploy the maybe the web API only you are going to deploy. You should not deploy any kind of the libraries to the deployment platform. Even so, sometimes, right? For example, you are deploying into the VM, right? You know the structure actually, like maybe the bin folder will be there, and inside that the list of DLLs and all will be there, okay. When it comes to the Docker or any kind of PaaS platform, you don't have any visibility like what is the folder structure there and all. Okay, so in this case and all, you cannot maybe just modify any kind of DLLs and all. So what we have to do is like we just to build and then take the maybe the release build of the maybe your web application, and then you have to push it to the maybe that particular environment. Okay, so in this
So
scenario, yeah, in this
Mhm.
scenario, you are just deploying the web application, not the class library. The class library we are not going to deploy. We are just consuming in your IDE, and then you are making use of the reusable function, and then integrating in your API project. That's it.
So whatever there in the bin folder, that's what is going to get bundled and then pushed to the other environments.
Yeah. Maybe maybe in the Visual Studio, right? There is a I think option called for release build and all. So you can just take the release build and then you can just copy and then paste in the target location. But this is only applicable for the VM related deployment. If you are deploying in the IaaS server. But if you are
Mhm.
going with any kind of pass and all, you cannot see. Maybe you cannot override any particular DLL and all.
Yeah, I have no idea on the other side on
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
pass.
yeah. I think maybe currently you are using the IAS related thing, right? So that's why you are
Correct.
confusing it. So maybe you have the clear idea, maybe what you have deployed, because maybe under maybe the site folder, you will be having some project, the deployment directory, and you will copy all the files and all. Okay. But in the other platform, like this is somewhat old, right? But in other
Mhm.
containerization related platform, you won't see any kind of thing. Once you have created the image, after that you have to create as the one another version of image. You cannot edit the already existing image with the DLL or whatever it is. Okay.
Got it.
But in
Yeah.
your case, maybe if you are manually editing something, there is a very high chances of making some mistake. Okay, but we don't know whether this is working or not. We don't. But even maybe if you are doing editing at the system level, it can work, but we won't have any confidence. Even sometimes it work, but sometimes there is because right, we are just trying to edit the build. So from the source code level you can edit it, and once you taken the binaries, you should not editing anything.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's I totally. Okay, so that's what like the other side of the like as you said like the pass or the containerization, which I am not aware of it. So very high level, I cannot clearly visualize and
yeah,
imagine how it is. So
yeah,
once we see it in action, might be then
yeah,
I can
yeah.
tie those knots.
Yeah, okay, miss. Yeah, because right, so we will be deploying our, maybe I will take an example of .NET also. We will be deploying
Okay.
into app service or Kubernetes service. So maybe just one example. Yeah, you can clearly understood. But in the app service, they will allow like maybe we have to copy the binaries in the FTP folder. But there also there is some possible like you can edit the DLL. But in the Docker and Kubernetes and all, yeah, we cannot edit anything actually. Okay. Yeah,
So when
maybe.
you say app services, is it like creating like a web service or a website, something like that?
Yeah. So for example, the app service, right? So maybe they are providing as the PaaS service. Maybe we are not handling. We won't install any the IaaS server, and we don't need to manage anything. Okay. I think mostly I'm thinking like the Microsoft in behind the scene, right? They will do the IaaS servers and all setup. And when we are doing the deployment, as like we are doing in the VM mission, they will copy the application in the same server. Maybe there's some of the managed servers, but we won't have any kind of UI there. They will just give the, this is the path, you have to copy the folders. That's it, the
Okay.
files, maybe the binaries actually. But I think even there also there are many things like but I know like they are providing some FTP directory. There we have to provide the release binaries and all. We have to upload the release binaries. Yeah, the app services like, yeah, I think it will be similar like IaaS. But from the
Mm.
IaaS, right, here you are going to create the web application in IaaS server, and we will be manually copying the server, the binaries and all here. But there we can just copy the binaries there. We won't do any kind of uh, maybe the IaaS server installation or patching update, because that is the pass, right? So the platform,
Mhm.
everything managed by the Microsoft team only. We won't do anything. Just apart, like we are just deploying the binaries alone. Okay, but the the Kubernetes is totally different thing. We will be instead of here we are saying like release build, right? So there we will be creating as the image. Okay, so from that image, once that is created, we can that is basically a immutable one. Okay, we cannot edit once
Mhm.
we have created the image. We cannot edit that one. If you want to new something, you can create the new image with this latest DLL or something. But once that is created, you cannot edit the existing image.
Or can you roll back to the previous image?
Yeah.
Like
You, for
build.
the deployment side, right? I'm just saying for build side. Okay. For example,
Build.
whether you are able to edit the image or not. So that is not possible. But the rollback, you can simply choose the another image version. You can deploy it into the environment. The rollback,
Okay.
rollout and all, you can, yeah, it will just expect, right? It will just expect like, so now 2.3 I'm deploying, okay, but there is some issue. I can easily revert back to 2.2, okay, but maybe the 2.3 is having some issue, so you cannot edit anything in the 2.3, like inside the some DLL we have to delete, and then so that operation we cannot do because that is the immutable one.
Okay. So
Yeah.
either we can go back to 2.2 or we can override with the 2.4 or something.
Yeah, you can, yeah, if there is, if you found the issue, right, so you can go ahead and create the 2.4 with the latest fix.
Right.
Yeah, just the session, right? So we have just to see the overview only, so maybe the
All
basics
right.
of Azure pipelines only.
Okay.
Okay, and
Yeah.
like
Uh,
overview, and for example, I'm saying to you, okay, so for example, the from that Azure pipelines only we are going to create the CI/CD pipeline, okay, and there are two options like classic designer, and another one is the YAML based pipeline, okay. The classic
okay.
designer, it is just for the learning purpose, and maybe in the traditionally the companies, maybe they were following, but nowadays because of the benefits in the YAML files, everyone is going to the YAML file based approach,
Mhm.
because we can create the pipelines in a file, and based on that file, Azure DevOps, it will do all the automation. But the classic designer means we have to do the drag and drop something. That's not the good way, right? So we will be
Mhm.
writing the CACD definition in the YAML file, and so based on that, Azure DevOps, it will maybe configure the stages, and it will run the script as mentioned in the pipeline file. Okay, and for that YAML file, we need to have that file in the root directory of the source code. Okay, and then the file name also should be like Azure pipelines.yaml file. If you are changing the file name or extension, it won't able to detect it. Okay, and then for example, the next one, the overview, the CACD service, and yeah, so this is the same thing, so you already know. And so from the Azure pipelines, like CACD, and then the test automations like performance testing integration, and functional testing integration, so those things we can do that. And also the infrastructure provisioning, like the Terraform, or you have idea, right? The infrastructure provisioning using the Terraform or the ARM templates or cloud formation. Okay, so maybe if you're not aware, maybe I'm just saying a uh, overview, like earlier, right? So for to create the resource, we have to log into the portal and we need to create the resource. But with the tools like Terraform, Azure, maybe the ARM templates, cloud formation, we can create the script. By just running that script, you can create the all the cloud resources like VM,
Mhm.
and maybe the SQL database, so everything by just running the script you can create it. But the only thing is we have to define the expectation there, like there is some format, so we have to follow that. Okay, and similar like configuration management, we need to run the Ansible playbooks. But just an overview only we have seen. Okay,
All
madam,
right.
so okay.
Okay.
And then the
Yeah.
next thing is Azure pipelines, the terminologies in the CI/CD, right? So we need to know the terminologies first, like what is agent,
Mhm.
what is artifact, and what is build. So those things we need to know, but some of the things you already know. Okay, so the agent means like for example, earlier also we have discussed, for example, if you are running any kind of script, okay, that has to
Mhm.
run in any one of the machine, right? So it won't be running in the same Azure DevOps server. So for example,
Mhm.
if you want to build any Java application, uh, maybe it needs Gradle or Maven, any build tool, and the build steps and everything, it will be happening in any one of the machine. Maybe it could be in the VM. And you also asked earlier, right, how to maybe make my on-premise VM as the agent machine. So maybe that steps we will maybe see in the next slide. Yeah, maybe where our build or the task is running. So that is called agent machine. Okay. And the artifact means like for example, the developer is will be pushing the maybe the code to the Git repositories, and from that source code repository we have to get the binaries, because we cannot deploy the source code in any one of the environment. We have to convert the source code into the binary, and then the binary only we have to push it to the deployment environment. But this is most of the language the same thing. But for the Python, right, we don't need to do any kind of binary conversions. We can directly deploy the Python language, the same Python, the source file, right? You can deploy and then you can run it. This is maybe from my experience, right? I have used Node and .NET, Java, and yeah, JavaScript and all. But the Python only the different thing. We won't do any source code to binary conversion. You will be directly deploying the Python file. Okay. And maybe, and then the next one is the build. Okay, whenever you are running the pipeline, right, it will give the one maybe it is like the instance of maybe the pipeline is called maybe the build. Whenever you are running the CI pipeline, it will create the maybe the new instance like build number 1, build number 2, build number 3, something like that is the build actually. Okay. And then the continuous delivery, like the CD means how it is automatically maybe staging the application deployments into the all the environments till the production. So that is what the continuous delivery. Okay, the integration, how you are ensuring that adding the new features incrementally without affecting the existing functionalities, with checking all the scanning and maybe the test case integration, everything. Okay. And then the deployment target, the target can be, right, the target means where you are deploying. For example, earlier me and Amos discussed, like maybe we want to deploy the application into IaaS server. Maybe the on-premise, we have the VM, and we need to set up the IaaS server, and there we need to deploy. Maybe it could be anything like on-premise environment, or in the public cloud like Azure and maybe the AWS. In the Azure also, right, they are providing many deployment platform like app services, Azure container instances, Azure Kubernetes services. So there are many platforms are available to host a API application, API or web application. So whatever I have said, right, that is for the API application. But based on the maybe the application type, the target also it can vary. Okay, maybe the target can be the Azure functions also. Maybe if you can develop the functions, and then you need to deploy into the Azure functions. Maybe in the AWS they are calling it like Lambda. Okay. And then the job, maybe before seeing the job we have to see what is stages. Okay. So for example, when you are creating the pipeline, maybe we have to group it, right? Maybe so this is the build stage, this is the deployment stage, this is the maybe the quality stage. Okay. So inside the stage we will have the many jobs. Okay. The jobs means like maybe I need to run the checkmark scan, I need to run the sonar quality scan. Okay. But those and all grouped under the one stage. Okay. And for example, the pipeline can have many stages, and each stage can many jobs, and inside the each job we will be having the scripts to run. So what is the task we actually need to run? For example, if it is the .NET project, right, maybe I am just running the command like .NET restore, that is the command. Okay. To restore the dependencies for our application, for our API application. Okay. So the job means for our stage can have many jobs, and then inside the stage maybe we will have inside the job we will be having the many tasks. Okay, the pipeline you know already. The release means once we have created the build, right, we will be creating the release, and from that release only we will be deploying our application. We will be deploying our release to the deployment platform. Okay, and the stage we have discussed, and then the task, and each job we will have the many tasks, like maybe the script you can think like the restoring the dependencies and packaging the binaries, something like on. Okay, and then the trigger, maybe the how, maybe the trigger means, right, based on the actions we will trigger the particular maybe the stage or job, and then it will perform some kind of actions. Okay, so maybe you are good with the trend, right? Maybe you will understand,
Yeah.
maybe you have to understand the agent and what is the artifact, something. Okay, and maybe before going further, maybe I need to ask you some questions like, so do you know like what is the SDK and what is the runtime environment? So for example, if you maybe this question may be to Amos. Okay, so you are
Dev,
yeah.
DevOps, I don't have any idea.
Okay, okay. No, no, no. Maybe it's not. Maybe
You
if you
know,
are
this, yeah, there is just some projects coming, so yeah, and
okay, okay,
we, we don't know, and that's why I'm just
okay, okay.
joining the
Yeah,
class.
yeah. Okay, Amrat. Maybe so. I'm not asking you the DevOps. Okay, maybe you are coming from the development background, right? Maybe development background.
From admin.
Admin. Okay, maybe you
Yeah,
may not have a chance to see that one.
yeah.
Maybe Amos can see. Maybe Amos, do you know like SDK and runtime environment? The difference between both?
SDK is nothing but software development kit, right?
Yeah.
And then for the runtime, it's like more like the on the IAS setup. Is that the one you are thinking about?
No, the IAS is right. That is the utility or application. So, for example,
Okay.
right, you are deploying your .NET application in your maybe the virtual machine. So, what are all the setups
Mhm.
you will do? For example, you can just copy and so run, that means it won't run, right? So, what are all the prerequisites you need to complete it?
So like registering the DLLs, those kind of stuff we need to do.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that is okay. So for example, right, the SDK, the software development kit, so it will be used in the development environment. So whenever you are developing, right, with the Visual Studio Code, sorry, Visual Studio
Mhm.
IDE you are developing, right. So at the time you will be in your machine, you will be having the software development kit. Okay, so similar like in Java also they will be mentioning like JDK, Java Development Kit. Okay, which means like
Mhm.
whatever the tools needed for the development setup, development environment, so that will be bundled as part of the development kit. Okay, so the runtime environments, like you don't need to, you are for example in your deployment server, right, you are not going to do any kind of deployment. So whatever the libraries things you need, those and all will be bundled, the minified versions will be bundled in the runtime environment. Okay,
So like
so
the .NET framework, those kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. For example, maybe you are, maybe which version of .NET you are currently using?
4.7 with different different flavors. Even
Oh,
some of the application with like VB6, I am still supporting here.
oh, okay, okay. Yeah, for example, maybe you know the .NET Core, right? So that is the .NET framework is there. So you know the
Mhm.
.NET Core, or maybe you are new to the .NET Core only.
I haven't done any project on the .NET Core.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
more on the
Hmm.
classical .NET.
Okay, okay. So in this case, right? So for example, to set up your local IDE, right? You will be
Mhm.
installing the .NET 4.5 SDK. Okay, and then
Mhm.
before you are configuring IAS in maybe in your VM, you will be installing the .NET 4.5 runtime environment. So when that runtime environment is there, then only your application will work. Otherwise, it won't work. Even if you are providing all the DLLs, everything, but you need to have the underlying environment, right? Like the runtime
That's what
environment.
the framework itself.
Uh, Come again, Amos.
No, that's what the 4.5, the .NET framework. So that will combine everything where the machine code will be like
Yeah, yeah. So in that for the framework, right? Within itself, we will have the development kit and then the runtime environment, something like. Okay, so this concept, it will be same like all the other technologies also. In a Java, right, they will be saying it like JDK and JRE, something like Java development kit and then Java runtime environment. So you got that
okay.
right. Yeah. So for
Yeah.
example, in your deployment server, you don't need to have the development, the toolings and all, because it will increase the disk memory space, right? So those things and all, we don't need that. So that's why they will be making minified version of files as the runtime environment. Maybe it will be, for example, if the SDK is about maybe the 500 MB, but the runtime environment, it would be just like 50 MB, because the minified version, so that your application, the performance would be better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so the next one, yeah, we will go to the next one. Okay, so for example, earlier we see, right, the agents. Okay, the where our build and deployment script is running, so that is the agent. Okay, so here there are actually the two possible ways. One is the Microsoft hosted agents and another one is the self hosted agents. The Microsoft hosted agent means the Microsoft itself, they are providing some agent machine for our build and deployment use case. So when you are creating your Azure free trial account, right, so you can see that like under the Azure pipelines, maybe the pool name also they are mentioning like Azure pipelines. Under that you can see many of the agent machine, maybe with the configuration like hosted vs 2019, which is means like they will give the one agent machine with a Visual Studio 2019 installed on the Windows Server 2019. Okay, so this is the Ubuntu 20.4 version. So similar like they will be providing some other maybe the agent also. So based on our maybe so based on your need, you can select which agent machine the particular job has to be running. Okay, so for example, I am saying one example. Okay, so the hosted vs
What is
2000
this Ubuntu? Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is the one of the Linux flavor. The
Hmm.
Ubuntu, Red Hat, and so there are many Linux flavors are there, right? So this is the one of the Linux flavor, the Linux machine, right? So when it comes to the operating system, there are three classification, like either it can be the Windows one, or it can be the Linux, or maybe another one is the Mac OS. Okay, so under the Linux we have the many variety or the flavors. I think the popular one is the Ubuntu, the Red Hat one and all, the licensed one. It would be the costlier. Maybe the Ubuntu and CentOS and uh, ma- so those and all the free version. Okay,
Okay.
so for example, so some of the time, maybe some of your for example, I'm just saying an one example. Okay, uh, for example, you are building a Java project. Okay, for example, that you can build in both maybe Windows and as well as Ubuntu one. So for example, in the Ubuntu, the OS, right, there we have the Java utility, Java and Maven utility is already installed. Okay, but in the Microsoft OS, they didn't configure the they didn't set up the Java and something. Okay, in that case, yeah, you can select the Ubuntu OS and then there you can run all the build and maybe the test setup, and then another thing like uh, other things like, so all the scripts, yeah, you can run basically. So for example, I would say like, for example, you are creating some iOS application. Okay, maybe that cannot be run, that cannot, the same source code can't be maybe built and testing in the Windows or Ubuntu one. Maybe at the time, maybe you need to have the Mac based OS, so there only you can run the build and all. So just I'm saying for an example, maybe the same the Mac source code, right, you can build in any one of the other flavors also, like Windows or the Linux one. Okay, but in sometimes in a where scenario they won't have the Windows support, so at the time you have to choose any one of the Linux flavor, and there you have to run the build and deploy. So you got it, Amos and Meprod?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another one is the self-hosted agents. So for example, when you are using the free account, right, they will be providing the 30 hours per month for the free one. Okay, so you can use those agents for the 30 minutes. Okay, if you exceeded the 30 minutes quota, you cannot run any kind of the build and deployment and all, because you have exceeded the quota. So otherwise what you have to do is like you have to purchase the maybe the licensed one, so that it will have the maybe maximum quota, so that you can utilize it. Okay, but mostly, right, it will be somewhat it will incur some charges based on the number of build and deployment and the frequency we are doing. So based on that, maybe the Microsoft will charge from our end. Okay, so for example, we have many VMs in our on-premise server, and then why we want to pay to the Microsoft for running the build and deployment and all. Okay, so in this scenario I don't want any one of the agent mission from the Microsoft hosted end. I am just, because I'm having the many agents in my on-premise server, many VMs are there. Even I am having the Windows server, Linux server, and the Mac OS. Okay, and so that I will use those VMs as the agent machine, so that whenever the build is running, so that will be assigned to the my virtual machine. So there, all the tests, the task, everything, it will be running. Okay, so that we don't want to pay any extra cost to the Microsoft for the agent, the Microsoft hosted agent machine. Okay, so for example, right, one scenario, I am having one company. We are just doing the Microsoft. Maybe we are doing just a .NET application. Okay, so I don't need any need of Linux, Mac OS based OS and all the operating systems related mission and all. I don't need. Okay, I just need to have the two Windows missions. Okay, so there I can just configure it as the agent mission, and then all the task, everything, right, all the build and deployment, everything will be assigned to that one, so that maybe I can save the cost, right, because anyway, since it is in the my on-premise data center, anyway I have to maintain it. Okay, so that I can utilize that particular VM as the agent mission, so that I don't need to pay any extra cost to the Microsoft Azure. Okay, so that is what the self-hosted agents mission. So how we are making our VM as the agent mission, so that the whatever the build we are doing in the Azure DevOps, it will be queued to our virtual machine. So it won't be go assigned to the Microsoft hosted agent machines. Okay, and then the next one is like, what are all the job types are there? The agent pool jobs, container jobs, and agentless jobs. Okay, for example, the agent pool jobs means like, for example, you have the maybe whatever the build, right, it is running in the self-hosted or Microsoft hosted agent machine. If it is running there, then we are calling it like agent pool jobs. Okay, and the next one is the container jobs. So this is the one popularity now. Okay, so for example, uh, so if we are we can create the maybe the Docker, maybe the environment. So basically, right, maybe inside the Docker we will have the many containers. So for example, I am having a virtual machine. On that virtual machine I am installing the Docker. On the Docker I can create many containers. The containers means it's like a mini virtual machine. Okay, so for example, now I can run maybe the 10 or more than 10 containers in the same machine. Okay, which means like 10 small VM in the same the host machine. Okay, which means like in the same machine I can run the 10 builds at a time. that the 10 builds I'm mentioning, right, that is based on our hardware configuration of the source VM, the host machine. Like if it is having the 32-bit or maybe the 32 GB RAM or 64, 128 something, then I can have the many number of, I can create many number of containers and I can run many jobs parallelly. Okay, because right, so for example, if I am assigning the one maybe the build to the particular VM, at a time I can do only one, so till it is completed I have to wait. Because right, so but if it is in the container, I can create, I can spin up the container, it will do for the .NET build, and if there is any build is another one is started now, I can create another one more container. I don't need to wait for whether the container is to be deleted or not. So that is the container jobs. So because the container, right, maybe still this is the minified version of the VM. Maybe for the maybe with the virtual machine we can save some kind of hardware resources. Even if you want to utilize the resource well, maybe we will go with the container based one. Okay, and then the next one is the agentless jobs. So sometimes, right, some of the tasks we don't need to run in any one of the agent machines. Okay, so that will be running in the same Azure DevOps server itself. So that is called agentless jobs. Maybe I'm just saying for an example, like maybe the triggering the notification and all, right, maybe mostly, right, those and all won't be running in the agent machine. So that those and all the smaller the triggering and all, right, so those will be running from the Azure DevOps server itself. So that is called agentless jobs. Okay. And then the next one is the pipeline concurrency. Okay. So for example, we have to define maybe in our if we are in the free trial, right? Maybe they will provide the parallel like two jobs alone. Maybe at a time, how many jobs we can run in a parallel. Okay, so for example, we have the 10 teams, and if at least, right, there is some chance like at the same time multiple teams they will run the build. Okay, if we have the maximum concurrency configured, so everyone can do the build automatically. But sorry, yeah, but if you don't have any concurrency, whoever initiated the build first, so they need to complete it, then only we can able to do the build. So till then, right, our build will be in the queued state. Once that agent is available, and then only we can start our build. So that is about the concurrency. So here we have to know like maybe what is the concurrency and how much time maybe in the time maybe computation, right, the compute resource like Microsoft hosted agents, so they will be providing like the 30 minutes, or maybe that is based on our subscription, maybe they will extend the computation hours. So till it is exceeded, yeah, we can use it for the build and deployment, running the pipeline. So those things, yeah, we can use it. So you can ask me, yeah, if you have any doubts or queries in that one. So Amos and Mibrat, so you are good.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Amos. And then the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we
So,
will, yeah. So now we will
yeah,
see the, yeah, yes, Mibrat, you have any query?
this pipe concurrency. So it's running pipeline
Yeah.
parallelly.
Yeah, concurrency means, right, the parallel. So how many jobs we can run in parallel. Okay. So for example, if you're running any build, right, at the end it could be any the sequence of jobs. Okay. For example, if you're running .NET pipeline, which means like sequence of jobs like restoring the dependencies, running the unit test cases, package, creating the build and packaging the build. So these are all the sequence of jobs, right? So at a
Mhm.
time, if the concurrency is one, at a time we can run only one task. Okay.
So
But if the yeah,
concurrency. Okay.
yeah. So if the concurrency is more, yeah, you can do the parallel, so that if you have the big teams, right, so you don't need to wait for anyone. Otherwise, if someone is initiated the build, you have to wait till they have completed. After that only you can initiate your build. So this is not the good solution at the enterprise level, right? So we need to run yeah. Okay. So okay,
So
Tim.
which
So
one is preferable one?
yeah,
Concurrency.
maybe for example, if you are in a maybe the learning, or you are working in a small startup, maybe even the concurrency is maybe one that is fine, because we even some of the teams and all they won't use the 30 minutes the free limit also. Okay. But when it comes to the bigger organization, they will be having the multiple teams and multiple projects, so that definitely they will need more the computation hours and all, right? So that they need to use the concurrency, because if they are wasting the time for the other teams build and all, right? So that we cannot complete the task on time, so that they have to go with the maybe the premier subscription and all. And there they have to set up the concurrency everything, like based on their need. Maybe at a time maybe they need the 5 concurrency, they need to run the 5 build or 10 build. So that is based on the team size and all, the team size and organization something.
Mm.
Okay. So the next one, right? So we will see the classic designer pipeline. Okay. So for example, so this is my organization and this is our application, the project name. And then when I'm going here, the pipelines. Okay. And here I have created this is the pipeline. You can create the new pipeline here as well. So for example, I'm clicking on new, and here you can see like so where your code is there, like maybe here you can choose like whether you want to go with the Azure pipelines, or you are going to use the classic editor to create pipeline without YAML. So there are two versions. The preferred one is the YAML one, but currently we are going to see how the classic editor is working on creating the pipeline. Okay. So for example, I'm choosing the classic editor for now. And then the first step is you have to say where your code is there. Okay, because these are all the popular the repositories, right? So that I am saying like in the same Azure repos only I'm having the repositories, because my project, the repository name also the portal React. Okay. And then maybe if you have the code in GitHub, maybe GitHub Enterprise Servers, SVN, and bit by cut also we can choose it accordingly. Okay. So this is the project, but I don't have any other project, I am having only one project, so that I am choosing this project. And then the repository also, and then which branch, the here I'm choosing it like master, because I don't have any other branches. Okay. So I'm just to click on continue, and so select a template. So here looking for a better one to configure our pipelines using YAML. Try the new YAML pipeline creation experience. Yeah, I think when we are doing this one, right, it will automatically create the YAML file also. But for this experience, right, for this one, we are going to see the classic editor, how it is working. Okay. So first one, I'm just creating the empty job. Okay. So for example, the earlier we have chosen the source code, and then we have created the one job. Okay. So in this job, right, maybe I'm just mentioning like build, and so my job name is build. Okay. So so in which agent machine my build has to run. Okay. So my project is maybe the React one, right? So it can run in both Windows, and it can run in the Linux machine also. Okay. So for example, inside the agent pool, so we have these many options, like here these are all the self-hosted agent machines. Okay, like Mac OS 11, Ubuntu, and VS 2017 and Windows 2016, which means like Visual Studio 2017 is installed on the Windows Server 2016. So based on your requirement, yeah, you can select any one of those. Okay. But in my case, yeah, I think the for building a React project, right, you need to have the Node.js installed. Okay, but maybe if you are not aware of Node.js, that's fine. Maybe I am saying it for like maybe you can consider like this is the .NET project. Okay, the .NET project, maybe it can be run in the Windows Server 2016 or something. Okay, even that can be run in the 2022 also, but in my case I'm selecting this one, VS 2017 and Windows Server 2016, because maybe sometimes, right, maybe the .NET application, it needs to have the .NET framework, everything has to install. Okay, but mostly in the Windows Server, right, so mostly all of the frameworks, everything will be installed already. We don't need to do any extra configuration. But the .NET framework also, along with the OS itself, it will be come. Okay, so we don't need to do any extra installation. Okay, but in this case I'm just choosing the VS 2017 Windows 2016. Okay, so that is fine. Okay, and so this is the source and this is the agent job. This is the build. Okay, so here I can create the task. Maybe what is the first task I need to do is like npm, maybe the .NET, right? We can just like a .NET. So maybe there are many things like .NET Core. So for example, if you are building for a .NET Core application, you have to use the .NET Core this task, the built-in task. But if you are using the .NET framework, I think there is something like MS build. Yeah, so we need to use the MS build for building the .NET framework related projects. Okay, but our things, right? So our application is in the React, so that I am just selecting the npm, like npm install or something. Um, so this is the npm install. So here these are all the possible commands like npm install, publish, and those commands and all. Okay, so already I have created something, so I will direct. So here you understood, right, how to create the classic editor, how to create the pipeline through the classic editor. Okay, and maybe this is the task window, and here the variables, right? If you want to pass any kind of variables, you can pass it from here. So for example, I can say like environment. Okay, this is the environment. Maybe I'm saying like dev. Okay, so similar like whatever the variable I need to have, so that I can define here. Okay, and then triggers, the triggers, like how I want the applications to be triggered. Like maybe here you can set up the scheduling, like every day 3 o'clock it needs to every day 3 o'clock it needs to run. So maybe when you are just seeing this one, maybe you can you can understand that. But this one, right, Monday through Friday at 3 a.m. the particular trigger will be started automatically. So those kind of the cron expressions you can set it up here. Okay, otherwise you can select everything and you can change the name also. So everything, maybe in the UTC2, maybe you can change it to the CST time. So all the operations you can select here. Okay, and then here you can select which branch you need to be selected for the particular build. Okay, maybe this can be master branch or the develop branch or maybe the deploy branch or feature branch, but that filter you can provide. This is the branching filter. So which branch you have to run the build. Okay, so whatever it is matching at the time of starting the build, it will run for that one. Okay, for example master or some maybe the feature or hard fix. So those things you can do, and also you can do the exclude also. Maybe you can say like the particular hard fix we should not run the build. So those kind of things, yeah, you can configure here. Okay, and then options, build properties and build number format. So for example format and all, right, I think it will be the number only, but if you want the format like the build number appended with maybe the year, month, and the timestamp also, if you want to attach it, maybe if you want to append, so those things, yeah, you can configure here. Okay, and then build job authorization scope, build job timeout in minutes. Maybe if the job is running over the 60 minutes, then by default it will maybe cancel the particular build. Maybe the 60 minutes and all very higher time, right? If it is maybe there is some problem with the build, our build pipeline or the infinite loop or some kind of things only, there is a possibility of having more number, maybe the time can be exceed more than 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes and all. So that you can set up some threshold like after 60 minutes even the build is not completed, you can just cancel it by force. Okay. And build job cancel timeout in minutes. Specify the maximum waiting time for a build job to respond to a cancellation request before being terminated by the server. Yeah, maybe cancellation request before being terminated by the server. Respond, but we didn't use this property. Yeah, maybe we'll see this one later also. Yeah, this one fine, but specifies the maximum waiting time for a build job to respond to a cancellation request. But if that is terminated by the user, that is one, but here they are saying like terminated by server. Yeah, okay, Tim, maybe I will see that one later, but it's not, but mostly right, the default configuration, that is fine. Maybe yeah, if you want, yeah, we will see this one later also. Okay, the history, yeah, maybe the history of changes, the audit log, everything maybe we can see here. Okay, maybe yeah, this is how you have to create the classic editor. Maybe I will show already one for this repository, right? We have created already one pipeline, so we'll see this one. Okay, so this is the pipeline. Okay, these are all the releases, and maybe when I'm going to here, right, the edit, you can see the current build configuration. I think we have selected. Okay, so first we'll see the CI pipeline. Okay, so for example, these are all the previous build history. Uh, so for example, so this is the React project, right? We need to have the node node.js installed in the server, and then these are all the npm install means like it is resolving the dependencies, and npm build means it will run the build, so which means like converting the source code to binary. Okay, and after that we have to publish the build artifact to the Azure pipeline. So for example, when we are running the build pipeline, right, maybe the CI pipeline, when we are running this command like npm build, at this time what it will do is like it will create a new folder in the same directory, and inside that it will copy all the binaries. Okay, so that binaries we have to publish it, and then we are currently it is we are naming it like drop. Okay, so in the same the folder, right, in the same inside the same folder only, the drop folder only, we will be having the all the binaries like so this one we will be using for the deployment, right? So inside the drop only we will have the binaries and all, the same the binaries we will be using for the deployment. Okay, so you have any query, maybe this is the simple pipeline. Here you are choosing the sources where you have the maybe the source code. Yeah, maybe in our case we are maintaining the source code in the same repository, right? And then the agent, the job configuration, like this is the job name, and this is the job name, and yeah, this is some kind of properties like and then here we need to specify the agent machine. Yeah, I think here we are configuring the, so in where we have to run the particular build and all. Okay, and these are all the sequence of so we have the one job, and then under that we have many tasks like restoring the dependencies, and building the maybe the building the binary, and then publishing the binary for deploying the binary to the concern environment, the deployment environment. Okay, so maybe I am just as click on queue, so that maybe here you can select like maybe which branch you want to run. Okay, here you can select master, develop, deploy something. And then currently we don't have any variables. Maybe in a real time application we will supply some kind of variables also. Okay, and when I'm clicking on run, so it will starts running, right? So here currently it is in queue. Maybe it will take some time for getting into the starting mode. Yeah, I think this is the free one, right? So it will take some time. Yeah, I think now it is started. See, so first one is the checkout job. So it is trying to check out the source code repository, and after that it will try to install the dependencies. So here the command is like npm install to resolve the dependencies. And maybe in the .NET, right, you will be using the .NET restore. So similar way you have to maybe run the command. So maybe that you also asked, right? I think the Redgate you have to integrate. Maybe that is for
Yes.
the deployment, the DB automation, right? So maybe your scripts and all, maybe the DDL scripts and all, you will be maintaining in the repository, and first you have to check out. And then you will be running some the Redgate commands like and then for that command you will be passing the deployment server name and DB name, maybe the those properties you will provide. And after that it will detect maybe what is the difference between the two states, like what is in the maybe the source code repository, and what is there in the current database state. And then it will compare both, and then it will apply only the changes it needed. So for example, if you are recently adding any constraint, or any default constraint, or any kind of the DDL changes, right, only the particular changes only it will execute it, the Redgate tool. Okay, so maybe you want to ensure like so in that agent machine, right, by default, in the self-hosted agent machine, right, by default, like all the Java, Maven, and the Python related build tools, everything will be there. But the Redgate is very something, but most of them no one used, right, because the application, the transformation, most of them they would use. But the Redgate, I think, I don't know whether the tool is already installed in the self-hosted agent machine. So at the time what you have to do is like you have to maybe yeah, maybe in your maybe on premise the self-hosted agent machine setup, right? So you have to install the Redgate related plugins or something, and after that we have to try. Okay, so maybe I will see, I think mostly that one also popular one, we'll see like whether that one is there or not. For example, I'm clicking on new pipeline. I will just see whether the Redgate is there or not, the plugin. Maybe I will.
I think it's popular, but
Okay. I think Redgate is, the spelling is correct, right? Redgate.
no,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
think this is the one, the Ready Roll something. SQL change automation tool. I think this plugin you can use, I guess.
Yeah, that one.
The SQL
SQL
change
change.
automation build. Yeah, I think I think this icon mostly it's the, yeah, these are all the extension. It is free. Yeah, here, right? Build and test database with Redgate SQL change automation. Okay. So what we have to do is like we have to get the extension first, and after that maybe we will have the task. So for example, I will get the Maybe I will choose this one. I will first install the extension. Yeah, I think these are all the three tasks we have to configure. I think, but anyway, right? The extension is free, but the tool you have to be the licensed one, because you will have the Redgate tool, right? So the maybe anyone giving access to you, my bro.
No, I think it's free for now.
But I don't know.
It's
Maybe the here, right? This is just
fine.
like a plugin. Okay, the plugin is they are giving it as the free, but the tool, right? The tool will be cost maybe the licensed one.
Mm.
So for example, the plugin we can install it as the free one, but yeah, maybe yeah, you can just to try by yourself, maybe, and if you are facing any issues, yeah, you can let me know. But anyway, right? Mostly the Redgate also it will have the uh, yeah, first here, right? I'm just installing the extension first of all. Okay, in the same organization, I'm just requesting it. Okay, I think now it will be installed in the extensions, but the extension itself not the maybe once the extension is installed, we can initiate the connection from Azure DevOps to the Redgate tool. But anyway, you need to have the Redgate tool, right? So for example, currently it is installed, so I am choosing the Redgate. Okay, uh, but still it is showing the.
Mm.
I think it is not coming here. Yeah, okay, my bad. Yeah, maybe we'll see this one, but mostly, right, under the task, there will be once we have installed the extension, once that is completed, you will have some kind of task, and once you have added, right, maybe similar like here. So, for example, uh, so I have added the npm commands there, right? So similar like
Mm.
you will be able to add the Redgate commands also. The task also you can add, and here, right, I am providing the input like the npm install those commands input I am providing, right? Similar like you will be passing the maybe some kind of comments or the connection details and all you will be passing it. But anyway, I know that we need to have some access to that Redgate tool, and after that through the plugin maybe we can connect the Redgate maybe from Azure DevOps to the Redgate actual server. Okay,
Alright.
yeah. So okay,
Mm.
team. So for example, right, currently the build is successful. Like so we have run this one, right? Earlier we have initiated the run. So currently this is successful. So even you can see the download logs, everything. Yeah, you can see here, and then the drop, right? I think. Yeah, you can see the maybe the build logs and all. Yeah, you can see here. Okay, maybe in the next session, right? Maybe now it is built successfully, and then it is pushing the artifact to the drop folder also. Maybe the tomorrow we can see the YAML pipeline, and then the how we can set up the self-hosted agent machine, and then we can try to deploy this application to the Azure cloud. We can see this one. Okay, maybe
Okay.
so far you have any doubt? Maybe the classic editor creating the pipeline and maybe the running the pipeline. So that is easy only, right? Maybe If you have any query, yeah, you can ask me. Yeah, we can discuss before winding up the session.
So this gate version here that it shows you, it will provide on the build or what?
Yeah, for example, before running the build, we need to check out the repository, right? So to check out the source code, what command you have to run, like a git checkout and then the repository URL. Okay. So on that agent machine, then we need to have the git installation. So then only it can connect to the git repository and uh, it can clone the source code. So that in that agent machine we need to have the git also, but basically it is supporting many git, tfs and then svn related repositories. Okay, so here you can see, right, uh, on this particular task it is running these are all the commands like git version, git lfs version, git init, and then it is running the git remote add origin. This is our repository url, and then finally here it is running the git checkout. So in this stage, yeah, it will get the latest code from our Azure repos, the repository. Okay. Yeah. So each task, right, it will do the one task. This is checkout, and then it is resolving the dependencies, and then it will do the build, the binary conversion, and then the binary conversion, right, it will be there in build folder, so that we are taking the build folder and staging it for the release, the deployment and all for the subsequent environment deployment, right. We need the build folder, so that we are capturing it and then storing it somewhere. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So Amos, so you have any query, any other query?
No, Selvan. I'm
Yeah.
fine for now. Let me play around tomorrow sometime if I
Yeah, yeah,
find some
yeah.
time.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, okay, Amos. Yeah, okay, my brother. Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night.